Crave more conversations with nightlife legends? Follow Rants and Raves on your favorite podcast platform. Gage Spex, formerly known as Gage of the Boom, is the epitome of a nightlife virtuoso. And forget the slashes. Gage seamlessly blurs the lines between their roles as an artist of multiple mediums, producer, host, dancer, performer, and then some. All that, and I haven't yet mentioned their thought-provoking and avant-garde fashions, which exemplify their deep knowledge of history and keen eye towards the future. Born in Bogota, Colombia, and raised in Massachusetts, Gage lived in San Francisco and Europe before fulfilling her childhood dream of moving to New York in 2010. A rare bird, Gage made their presence known from pretty much the jump. Gage and co-collaborators launched Spectrum, an experimental art space, in 2011, and it soon became a meeting ground both day and night for the broad cross-section of queer life. After its closure in 2016, Dreamhouse followed suit, continuing to fulfill its founder's vision in a new space until it ultimately closed in 2019. Though not currently a permanent space, Spectrum parties continue today, continuing to push boundaries with their unique amalgamation of arts, attendees, and attitude. Gage, welcome to Rants and Raves.
Thank you for having me. I'm so excited. I've been watching/listening to the podcast since it began, and I've been really obsessed with a lot of the episodes.
Thank you. Well, it's a mutual obsession because Spectrum and Dreamhouse it's just meant so much to me, and I've had some very pinnacle moments of my life happen there.
Aww.
So when I started to think of topics for the podcast, you were very high up on the list of people that I wanted to have on as a guest and pick your brain and also just learn more, because there's a lot that I don't know, and I'm sure a lot that the listeners don't yet know. So eager to jump in.
Yeah, it's a whole different era right now.
And I think there's a lot, there's always a lot that one can learn and one can take forward from talking about the past. But I think it's a very specific point in time that it's especially important.
Yeah.
Cool. And for anyone listening, you can hear the background. We are in the middle of Bushwick, and you can hear, it's very authentic. You can hear the train go by. So if there's some background noise, we're in Gage's apartment, which is a feast for all of the senses. It's my first time in it. And there are, collections abound, not only the doll collection, but the art, the furniture, every single piece is so well thought out.
Welcome to Gay Doll's Dreamhouse, part 75,000, it's like the Spectrum, the Dreamhouse, it's like, it still is here. This is from the Dreamhouse furniture and etc.
I feel like I could walk around for for many, many visits and find new things every single time.
Yeah, there's stories and everything. So my parents growing up, I grew up in Western Massachusetts. Like you said, I was adopted from Columbia, grew up in Western Mass, and my parents were also extreme collectors. I grew up in a Victorian dollhouse, and so it was I grew up in 1887. Wow. And so the whole house they restored into a house museum, and they would drag me to flea markets and all that stuff. So that's how I started collecting vintage Barbies and things like that. And also it's sort of the reason why, because they were and I was so immersed in Victorian era growing up, I went in the opposite direction. I was I want plastic, I want future, I want retro, I want shiny, not necessarily Rococo or Victorian stuff. Even though it's still
I was I see a piece over there.
Speckled in there still. Yeah.
But that's really interesting that you just kind of rebelled aesthetically into a completely different into something completely different, into the future, you know, because I see, you know, in so many of your looks, it's like there's nostalgia and there's future, and the combination is just so. I mean, the variety of the looks that you give are just astounding.
Yeah, it's very like ancient aliens.
I love that. Ancient aliens. Ancient aliens of many different galaxies and many different flavors. I love that. That's really cool.
Well, here we are in my house dress.
Exactly. I was just going to say, in your house dress and dressing gown, I guess.
Yeah, you know, we got layers to the game.
I love this. It's almost like, I think, how did you put it when I walked in? It's like you're going to bake cupcakes, but also...
It's very like at home with Gage Sedaris.
Yeah, I feel like there just needs to be an easy bake oven that goes ding any moment.
And then you just pull out one cupcake, a miniature cupcake.
Yeah, and then we just split it. Yeah. Like I never had one of those. I really
Me neither.
I really want, but it's basically a light bulb. So I don't know how much I was missing out. But before we dive in any further, just want to make sure I'm using the right pronouns. Which ones do you prefer?
I've really literally gone through every pronoun under the sun and had like a sort of gender adventure since childhood, where I like really grew up as like a little girl doing ballet, playing with Barbies, really being like, I'm a little girl. And then having to go in the closet, then coming into like San Francisco and just like living many different lifestyles that really ranged. And even in my San Francisco life, and then when I first moved here, it was like 24/7 club kid, drag, like you know, makeup everyday style. And then more recently, I've definitely like I did hormones for like 3 years too. And so it's like, I really was like, okay, I'm going to give myself this time to sort of really just go there and figure it out. And like, maybe I do want to like transition. And then in the long run, I like learned a lot through the process, but then I came back to sort of being like, you know what, I'm still sort of the same, you know, gender fluid type person and in a way being more like, oh, what do you see me as? Like, I'm really comfortable with any pronouns, and those pronouns and even my presentation or whatever can change literally when the wind blows in a different direction.
And there goes the train.
There goes the train again. My mom also was very feminist, like extreme feminist, and in the way where she was like, I don't want to be like cooking in the kitchen for the family, like, and she even started like a women's reproductive / it was like kind of like Planned Parenthood alternative that was a little bit more radical in Western Mass that ended up being called Tapestry in the long run. I think it was called Family Planning at the beginning.
It's a really good name.
Yeah. And then, so that was, anyway, so because of that type of thing, like she also was like, didn't want to wear makeup. She was like, I wear jeans. I don't like subscribe to these gender norms of like what it is to be a woman. And so also ironically, when I started taking hormones, I really went in the opposite direction. I was like, I don't like, I thought I would be like, you know, kind of like leveling up where I was coming from. And I actually kind of ended up being way more like Sporty Spice than I even ever thought. I was like, wait, whoa, hold on. I wasn't expecting this one.
Like, you thought it would be like hyper, quote unquote, like femme.
Yeah, I was like, ooh, this is gonna be fun. Like, we're gonna really like, you know, pump up the vibes. But no.
Well, I think you do lots of pumping up the vibes.
Yeah, so now we're back. We're doing it all.
Cool. Well, thank you for sharing all of that. All right, so let's dive in a bit further. I would love to hear about your entree into raves and the dance music scene in general.
Okay, so when I was 14 years old, there was actually a rave club in Springfield, Massachusetts called the Asylum. And I would sneak out of my house at the beginning, but when my parents didn't know about it. And I would like literally be wearing like a trench coat and then like a secret, like really like scantily clad weird like club kid outfit underneath. And I would like walk down the sketchiest street ever to get there, and like somehow I was also already on the list. Like, and it was a 16 plus club, but I was like already on the list and sneaking or like just getting in at 14.
That's
And so
hilarious.
it was crazy. And it was like before, it was around the year 2000. So it was like the late 90s. And it was big. It was like, it was multiple rooms. It had like a huge transfer room and then like a drum and bass hip hop room, and then like another side room that was like more house, and then another one that was more like hardcore, like techno and gabber and like stuff like that, and then even like happy hardcore too. Forgot about that. So yeah, it really was like that. Really brought me into it really fast. Like, and it was just like I loved. I had been dancing since I was a little kid. Like I always loved dancing, and I went to ballet classes, and then in high school I did like more like you know, funk, breakdancing, popping, locking, all the stuff like that. And so it was just like seeing that type of dance culture and music culture was really amazing, and also just being able to sort of see everyone showing up, because also people would come at that time. They would like drive from like New York City or drive from like different states to get to like wherever the rave was. Like people would travel for these big, massive raves, or like, you know, bigger raves. It was crazy.
Totally. I wonder if I love that you were on the list like basically from the jump.
Oh yeah,
it's amazing.
Immediately.
And I wonder if it had to do with your dancing, like if you were kind of spotted out or something.
Ironically, my dad my dad was a guidance counselor at a high school, and this woman that he worked with, her son was a DJ there.
Got it.
That was the
It's got a little end.
Yeah.
That's amazing. And yeah, we both have that in common, by the way, in terms of dance, because I grew up as a ballet dancer. So I mean, trained classical ballet like from 4 years old. So
yeah,
that's still who I am to the nth degree. Cool. And then when you arrived in New York in, what was it, 2010, right? Or 2011, what was the scene like when you arrived? Was it everything that you had imagined, or did you find that it was lacking for you personally in some aspects, or a combination maybe?
So actually, since I'm from Western Mass, like I would be sort of like coming every year for like holidays and stuff like that. So I would come to visit New York, kind of like, you know, probably, yeah, like every year, kind of like from 2004 when I moved to San Francisco onwards. I would like be in Western Mass, and then I would like come to visit New York and sort of like feel it out. And it was like just not, it was a very different time frame. And even right before I moved to New York, I was trying to move to Europe, because I was sort of like, I had stopped in New York on the way, and I had looked at, like, I had been here to see my friend Posey and some other friends, and it was like it was weird that cabaret law really still existed. So there was like, even at like the Cock, there was a big sign on the wall that said no dancing.
Yeah.
And I thought it was a joke, and I literally would get kicked out of places for dancing. And I was like, wait, what? Like, I was so confused coming from San Francisco and coming from, like, even being at, like, parties and clubs in Europe. Like, I'd been in Europe a bunch. So I was just sort of, like, so used to, like, dance culture and club stuff still.
Yeah.
But, like, I was like, why in New York? I didn't understand that sort of, like, history of all the things that happened leading up to that. And so then, when I was visiting New York before I moved here, it was very dead still. I was like getting in trouble. I was like, okay, I wish I liked it more. I wish it was like, I want to live here, but it's just not what I want it to be. And so I went to Europe, had a crazy time. I think that was like when I first went to Berkheim and all that stuff. And that was probably, I guess, in like 2009. Anyway. And then I got back to New York because I ran out of money. And I was like, well, I guess I'm moving to New York now. And so I moved to New York, and it was like New York had exploded with like rainbows and unicorns and colorfulness and drag queens and trans people and DJs and dancing, and it was wild. It was like, I remember going to Van Dam at Greenhouse, which is Suzanne's party.
Mm-hmm.
And I just had never seen anything like it. I was just like, wait, what is happening? You know, it was like that kind of thing had exploded, and it was just extreme and like opulent and bottle service and all of our friends working there. And that's how I met everyone.
That's so cool. Greenhouse was in the city, right?
Mhm.
Okay, cool.
It was at Vark and Van Dam.
I moved here in, I think it was 2008, but I didn't go to Greenhouse. I was kind of on another, but I had a similar experience where when I moved here, and it was like, I was like, why isn't anybody dancing?
Yeah.
In fact, coming from Detroit, I was like,
Oh my
I don't
God.
like it. I was like, no one's dancing.
Yeah, and also
I
people,
was the odd dog. for
people
sure.
were like, people needed people to wake up the dance floor. People were really
Mhm.
uncomfortable, and you know that was a big part of like the starting the Spectrum and stuff like that. Was like I was like, we need to start this as dancers because we need to help people get comfortable in their body.
100%. I remember I was at CLO,
Mhm.
and this is very soon after I moved here, and somebody who I didn't yet know who later became a friend. I also had like this big giant purse, but I was like dancing around doing my, my style of dance, which takes up a lot of room. And they told me later they were asking me, like, is she okay? And they were like, oh, that's just Tova. That's just how she dances.
Mhm. Totally. Yeah.
So it was
I know.
definitely a bit different then.
Yeah.
But yeah, still have same moves.
Yeah, I know. I was definitely exercising demons on the dance floor a lot.
That's literally what it's all, one of the things it's best for, I think.
Yeah.
And then how did the concept for Spectrum come about, and what was your intent with it? And I'd love to hear about the evolution of it as well.
Okay, so I had already started working in nightlife because, and that happened pretty fast. I think I had first started, Lady Fag was the first person to hire me.
Mm-hmm.
And for this party called Wowie that she
Wowie?
was doing. Yeah.
Like Wowie Wowie.
Yeah, and then it was like Clubber Down Disco in the Chelsea Hotel too. And then I had started working with Suzanne after that. So I was already in the nightlife kind of swirl and dressing up and doing my thing, but then also and that was turning into like a job, you know, like more of like a paid gig that was like helping me survive in the city. But I still really was not making ends meet, and I was really broke and struggling, and also trying to like have an art practice and a performance practice. And so me and a friend, Nicola Gorham, we were like just at her house that was actually close to the Spectrum.
Mm-hmm.
And we were just talking about sort of like the commonalities of our lives and what we were like missing and what we needed, and like being like, we cannot be continuing to rehearse for our dance things in our bedroom. Like we just do not have space to create the work that we want to be creating. And that was the big main number one thing. And we also couldn't afford, like, there was sort of like rentable space at like maybe like Triskelion Arts or things like that. They were like $15 an hour, but we just could not afford that. It was like, and so in this conversation, I had already been looking for an apartment, and I always had been interested in doing something and like living in more of like a live workspace or a warehouse or just a commercial thing that was converted. So yeah, I had experience with a lot of different sort of commercial spaces and squats and things like that in Europe and the Bay Area. I was like in New York too. Things are so expensive that I was like, maybe I can find a secret thing in the commercial like listings on Craigslist.
Ah, that's
so
smart.
I was always just scanning Craigslist, and I still scan Craigslist still.
I mean,
like,
Craigslist gives.
Whatever, you never know. It's a little creepier and weirder nowadays, but then it was
Even
golden. It was really.
I mean, I was not an angel on Craigslist, so
No,
not in like
that era.
I was like, it was sport.
Yeah. So I was, like trying to find this gem on Craigslist of, it was so expensive for apartments even then. It's even worse now. But I was like, okay, maybe in the commercial listings I can find something that is like, even just bigger square footage.
Yeah.
And like whatever, if I have to put a hot plate in it, that's fine. I
Yeah.
don't need a full-on kitchen.
No.
I was in my 20s, I was probably, I think I was 25 at that time. And so I was talking to Nicola about our common artistic problems. And I was like, I had actually seen this listing for this place that, it's like, maybe we should call them. And I pulled up the listing, and, it really did take her like push to do it. It was sort of like, I dare you to call them right now. And we just like cold called them in the moment.
Like it seemed like preposterous, like not feasible.
I don't know if I would have necessarily done it myself. It was like we really did need to sort of like be there together to like do it.
Yeah.
And then so we called, and we got to like go look at the space, and it was just such a like it wasn't like I had been looking and going to see other spaces at all. It was the first place we looked at.
Really?
And yeah. And so we were a little discouraged at what it was. The listing made it look like it was 2 times as big because they had done these sort of like before and after photos of the space. Because the space was all painted black with like wall-to-wall mirrors. It had been an aerobics studio, actually. So it looked like it had multiple rooms, You're like, for this price? Like, I don't know. This is such a good deal. It's too good to be true. So it was a little too good to be true.
Were you immediately interested when you saw it, though?
We were like, well, what do we do? Because we both had like $40 in the bank. Like, we had no money. And so we had to figure it out. We were interested. We were like, this actually has such potential. It was definitely creepy. It had like really creepy vibes, and it was very dark and dingy and like moldy, and like we needed to like, do some energetic cleansing for sure. Like a lot.
Like energetic and then zhuzh it up also.
Yeah, but at the same time it didn't need much zhuzhing. It was all like mirrors and painted black and had like a disco ball and like
It already had a disco ball?
Yeah, and a stripper pole. And so it had like gotten turned into a back room of a bar, like a secret back room that I guess was probably illegal. But anyway, and then it had these 3 back rooms that were probably like private dancing rooms.
Got it.
And that ended up being my bedroom and our bedrooms, So it was wild. So we ended up being like, okay, should we do this? And then we ended up borrowing money from basically like, I had like a daddy at the time. It was like not like a sugar daddy necessarily, but it was like a older guy I was like seeing kind of, and he lent me money. And Nicola also figured out her borrowing money from someone, and it was sort of like, it was pretty cheap. Like I think it was at that time just for that room. Like they also, the front bar was for rent, and I was sad that we couldn't have gotten that at the same time, but it was probably for the best in the long run. But for just that back room, I think it was like $2,100 a month.
And that sounds it was pretty big. And just to say, I started going to Dreamhouse right after it first opened, but I never got to go to Spectrum. Where was it, I guess we should say too? Like,
so it was on Montrose Avenue and 59. And so it's like 2 doors down from where the Rosemont is.
Yeah.
And the Rosemont kind of it has like a little bit of that. Like there's that little dance floor with the mirrors. That's like a tiny little chunk of what that was like.
Got it.
Because the actual Spectrum was the whole, like the backyard of the Rosemont, that was the whole room of the Spectrum. Got it. So it was like deep. And I think that they had built it onto the backyard. And that was probably why it was so dank. Yeah, it was crazy. And the neighborhood was very different at that time. It was like Little Puerto Rico. It was definitely like people did not necessarily like us moving in. It took a little time to warm up the neighbors. And honestly, we were like in our place of gentrification. You know what I mean? It's like as soon as the queers show up, watch out. There goes the neighborhood, And so it was sort of like that shift in ways. But we were very good for businesses. The
I bet.
businesses loved us eventually.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, I mean, we ended up living in the space downstairs, and then we ended up, as soon as the apartments upstairs were available, we ended up moving upstairs. So we had the full building, and
wow.
the front part, my landlord actually had as a breakfast place for a year or two, I think.
Mm-hmm.
He had like fixed it up as a breakfast place, and honestly, it was like kind of the best cover. It was so like family and like vanilla.
Well, yeah, and then people are going in and out, whatever, and it's
Yeah, with
not...
their like little coffee and whatever. And then yeah, but you wouldn't have ever known. You know, it looked like you were walking into a apartment building.
That's really cool. And so when you and Nicola moved in, did you immediately have off the bat a concept of what you wanted to do with the space, or did that evolve over time?
You know, like we were first off there as creating creative space
Mm-hmm.
for ourselves, of like a space to create work and a place to rehearse and a place to like make bigger types of like sculptural things, or even sewing projects and stuff like that, where you didn't have that much room otherwise. So it was like studio.
Mm-hmm.
And for other people to rent that out at a sliding scale level.
Mm-hmm.
So it was affordable to people, and it also could even be for trade or something, you know.
Mm-hmm.
People could like volunteer, you know, and or like we would just like be very honest. If people didn't have money, we'd be like, okay, sure, here you go. If it's not being used and you want to like make a music video, go for it. Like
Sure.
we want to just like support people, and especially at that age, we were like in our mid-20s, so it's like a lot of people, all of our friends needed that type of support at that time. And so then it also was a lot about daytime programming as well. So we had like yoga classes, Pilates classes, dance classes, and then more experimental type performance nights that were like movement-based dance events or experimental music. And the dream was that would financially take care of itself, but the reality was obviously, unfortunately not. And still, it's like, you know, I would love to be doing more performance nights that are like, you know, experimental dance, experimental music. But it's like, you know, venues are looking for a bigger amount of money and a bigger amount of people to come out, unfortunately.
They
and so
need a
that's
return
not,
to be self-sufficient. Yeah.
Exactly. So it's unfortunate that is not as possible generally. And so we really fast knew, I had already been working in nightlife, and I was like, I know how to make money. And we were like, let's throw a party. Let's have basically a rent party. And like, I think the first party was like a New Year's party, and like Will Automagic DJ'd.
Oh, cool.
I think Michael Magnan might have DJ'd. I don't really remember who DJ'd, but I definitely know Will did. And we had like amps. It was like we did not have sound. Like we really like and things were like dying in the middle of it, and then we were like bringing in more like speakers and things, and it was just so like just figuring it out as you go, like so DIY. And then that just grew and grew and grew, and
but
it just became,
DIY, but successful. Like...
Yeah, it became successful very fast, and it was something that people really wanted, because really the alternatives at that time were like, also it was like pulling teeth to get people to go to Williamsburg. Everyone was only going to Manhattan.
Yeah,
and they're like, I don't know, I don't go over the bridge. Oh my God, that's too far, you know. And we were like, oh, come on. And then the only alternatives for like our kind of queer world at that time were like Metropolitan, Sugarland. And that was much more at that time like top 40 music. Like it was not electronic music. Maybe there was some like, hip hop, maybe a little bit of disco here and there. And there were some like loft parties. I think like Spank was happening and things like that. And then obviously other things that I didn't really know that were going on too, but you know,
because I was going out, but in a very like adjacent but different scene. Like I was going to Bunker and like a whole bunch of other things.
Exactly.
Like there were things going on, but it was definitely a different picture
Yeah.
than what it is today.
And I think that it was also, a lot of it was about melding those worlds and bringing the worlds together, because I was always like a cloud jumper. Like I would jump from one party and one scene to another scene. And I was one of only a few people who would do that. And I was always trying to drag friends places that they were like, I don't know about this girl. Like, why are we here?
We should have met earlier.
Exactly. We were
doing
doing the same thing at the same time.
I'd be like just going to, I'm like, what's new? What's new? What's new? What's new? You know?
Yeah.
Just something I'm trying to do a lot more these days as well.
Definitely.
There's a lot out there. I also didn't ask, how did you come up with the name Spectrum?
We actually had a very long list of names. And, you know, I love Nicola. We definitely had different visions for like what we wanted. Like her vision, I think, was more like high end, kind of like the Follies or something. You know, what's it called? Vaudeville.
Yeah.
Like more burlesque and like lounge singery.
Yeah.
And mine was more like DIY, punk, like loud, rave, underground. And those really clashed. So like we were only involved together in that project for 1 year, for the first year.
Got it.
And so it was like, that was one of the examples of like, you know, us having to really figure out, like coming to like an agreement of something, and that was one of the few things in this long list that came together. Like... And it was a spectrum, and I think that it was, you know, it was something that really was all encompassing, and it just resonated with us as being, you know, fitting for what we wanted to see.
On my end, going to Dreamhouse, it's just such diversity of like in every level of who was there, but what the programming was and what you would get on one night or morning, really. It could be completely different than what you would get from day to day, week to week, or month to month.
Yeah.
Like it was so vast and surprising, which is one of the things I love most about it.
Yeah. I think that also coming from San Francisco was such a queer, like, it was very queer, it was very glam and very DIY, and very like radical kind of separatists. Like I feel like I got raised by like lesbian separatists, trans separatists, you know, and so my mindset was very like radical and very like a little extremist in certain ways. And I have a lot of respect for like separatist type parties and things like that. And like, you know, so with the Spectrum, it was like about doing kind of like two things at once, which were, you know, in some ways in New York at that time, things were very like sort of segregated, I guess, in a certain way, of like parties being very different. Like there was like, it was like gay man party, then lesbian party, then trans party. And like those things didn't really overlap very much. And the queer world at that time was just very different. Like San Francisco, it was very, it was almost like more high fashion in a way. Here it was more like academic and political. And that was not my vibe. Like I was like, wait, we need fashion, we need music, we need like high end, you know, cuntiness, I guess.
And the things that are a reprieve from life. You know?
And so I was like, we need to create a space for that, and also a space for weirdos, you know, and weirdos not just of one gender necessarily. So it was also like, it really was also very by, I guess, AMAB people who were very femme or like trans-esque or gender fluid or whatever. So it was like, it was about creating a space that was comfortable for that like, you know, we could be a little bit more like relaxed.
Got it.
From the outside world that was like pretty harsh at that time. Like the sort of homophobia, transphobia in the city was just a lot more intensive on the street and sort of every day. And that happened a lot with women as well. We like wanted a space where like we could bridge all those worlds.
Where people can come together.
Yeah. And also racially, you know.
I was wondering, in this era that's so rife with safe space, and 2011 being so long ago, and that really wasn't a thing, or
I feel like the conversation has changed at different times about it, because even still then, like when I first moved to New York City, like the idea of consent was like in the gay man world like was almost non-existent, and I had come from San Francisco that was very aware of like, you know, trans bodies, women's bodies, consent
Mm-hmm.
as a thing, and open dialogue about relationships and things like that.
Yeah.
In New York, not so much. It
Yeah.
really was. I was shocked. Like I was getting sexually harassed all the time,
Oh.
like groped physically. Like people would be totally like accosting people at the club all the time.
Yeah.
It was really nuts. Um, and we were also wearing like no clothes. You know, it was a lot of information.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was just really surprised by that. And so that was one of the parts too of like creating the Spectrum, of being like, we're creating a space that is more using this vocabulary about safer spaces,
Mm-hmm.
and communicating that when you walk in a bit, and like, and with security and enforcing things and
Was it
taking care of people.
was it communicated at the door, or was it more so implied, you know, rules and something was done if something happened?
It was sort of like it wasn't, I don't know, I mean, I think occasionally people would talk about it at the beginning. We also had a lot of women who would work at, like, the door.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think that sometimes that would be part of what they were talking about, maybe.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't know. I don't think it wasn't like a nowadays safer spaces type
Yeah.
of situation. It was just more of a thing that we were also going as we went and seeing the problems as they arose, and then
Exactly.
dealing with the problems as they arose, and also coming from our own awareness of what we needed, and like what, and people, and telling people, really being like, with everyone who was DJing or working the party, having that dialogue of like, if you see something, like, you know, we have security here, but also like we need everyone to be in open dialogue. Like if you see someone having an issue, like come and get us.
Yeah.
Like you can go to the bar, you can find me, you can, you know, like please don't just like let it happen. Like let's actually deal with these things and create a safer space for people to feel comfortable and free and open.
Yeah.
And secure. And that was really beautiful. But then at the same time, you know, we had to have some hard moments with people, and like learning, and it was sketchy. And I think that in the long run too, we started realizing that like we had really like utopian visions, and some of those utopian visions weren't really reality. And safer spaces, like the idea of safe space, we kind of realized was somewhat of a myth.
Yeah.
We realized, we were like, we're not going to call this a safe space. Like we're, you know, we want to be honest that we're in New York City. It's probably not a safe space, and we don't want to give you that false hope that we're in a safe space. Like you're in a as safe as, like, hopefully we can make it space. Good luck.
Which includes you as part of the way that we keep it safe. I couldn't agree with you more. For me, the intent of it is amazing, but I think it sets an unrealistic expectation for folks, and that's a whole other podcast about that. But I do think that personal responsibility, as you mentioned, you know, not only what you're bringing to the space, but your awareness within it for the people around you, those that you know, those that you don't, and especially your friends. Like if someone's, you know, going off the rails, like how do you contain that before that becomes a larger issue for the party and all of that?
And there were definitely periods where we were, you know, because we had this open dialogue with our friends and family that were at the spaces. You know, there was a moment where my friend, who's a lesbian musician, was like, yeah, but this is like a gay man's club. And I was so hurt by that. Like, I was like, oh my God, no. It was like, you know, it was like, what? And it was like, my reality was like shattered. But then I was like, you know what? Thank you for that information, and let's do something about that.
Yeah.
Like, let's really make a point to change that.
Yeah.
And what can we do? We're going to hire women. We're going to make a point to hire women. We're going to have more lesbian DJs. We're going to throw a lesbian party. We're going to like put we're gonna have women making those decisions of booking and give our space to other people to do something with.
Which is so fab, and something that still to this day, I mean, what is it, like 15 years later, it doesn't happen enough.
Yeah.
You know, for sure.
It's wild. But I do also, you know, I have to say I do have a lot of respect for, you know, some of the parties right now. It takes a lot of work and effort and navigating to steer the ships away from the rocks. And sometimes it, you know, we might not like the way it ends up looking, but at least it's happening. And there's a conversation of like how to do that at the door with like a door policy around gender or something. And we did that too. We started Dagger, and that was the party that was like $50 if you were a cis man.
Oh, wow.
You
really?
know,
Okay.
and we were like, bam, you know. And I mean, at that time too, the tickets were more like $10, $15.
So that was
and it
like
was
a-
like, yeah, we were, you know, people were really not trying to pay money to get into a club. We were slowly raising the money. And, you know, I think at the Dreamhouse when we did Buffet, which was like the like femme sex party, that was like $100 for a cis man to get in, you know?
I mean, that back then, like, that was like...
Yeah, and it was just, you know, I mean, all that is for negotiation. You can haggle your way in if you want.
If you know what you're doing.
Yeah, good luck. But, so I don't know. I mean, I think that, like, that was... important to sort of like figure those things out. And then also with safer spaces stuff too, there were different periods. Like, so the Spectrum was one period of time, and that space too was definitely sketchy. Like, we did not have as many exits as we would have liked. It was definitely scary. We were always a little bit terrified. We had a lot of fire extinguishers, like, knock on wood, thank God we got out there. But then when we moved to the Dreamhouse, the ghost ship had happened right before we opened. Like, we literally, I think we were in negotiations of the lease and stuff like that when the ghost ship happened.
Was it 2016 when ghost ship happened?
Yeah, and that was like, you know, so linked with our community because I was from San Francisco. And so it was like, you know, we knew friends who had been there and things like that. And so it just was such an impact on our world. And so sad, and really then putting the importance of what those decisions as a venue owner or manager of, like, you're like, whoa, we really have to take this very seriously, and we're like, you know, playing with people's lives. And I'm also a person who's very claustrophobic. Like, I really feel when there's too many people in a room, you know, and so, like, that was a big decision that was then, at the Dreamhouse era, like a completely different thing about safer spaces.
We had talked very little so far about Dreamhouse. So Spectrum closed because... why?
So the Spectrum, we were having such a good run. Like, to be honest, like, there was a period of time in the midst of it where it was like each party was better. And I was like, I don't know how long this can last. Like, I don't, like, this is wild. Like, pinch me. Am I in reality, you know? And then it sort of like hit a place where it changed, and it was starting to, like, you know, it was almost like had outgrown the shell, and you could feel that there were too many people in the room. It was so hot, like the walls were sweating and dripping. It was just out of control. We had expanded to the front room that was like a chill room.
The front room that was a bar that you had mentioned earlier. Got it. Okay.
Yeah, that had been a bar and then the breakfast place.
Okay, got it.
And so, like, but things financially were really great. Like, we were in a place where we were able to pay everyone. We were able to pay rent. We were, like, you know, able to start having more of a team that was, like, you know, paid hourly. You know, from the beginning, we had to really go from, like, a very DIY financial structure to, like, learning how to create a business financially. So we were at a great place, and then we found out that the landlords, because there had been two of them, one had been living in Miami, and he had literally lost the building in bankruptcy court.
Oh my
Um,
God.
and his business owner, who was my landlord who I dealt with all the time, didn't even know. And so allegedly, it was a surprise for him.
Hmm.
And
Did you find out by like a notice on the door, or how did you, or how did you find
I
out?
think the landlord maybe did like get like a notice
Hmm.
that the city was possessing the building, and then we had to go to housing court and fight for being able to like stay there longer,
Hmm.
and we kind of like won, and it was great because we were able to be given a number of months where we didn't have to pay rent, and
Oh,
we were
that's
able
bad. Save
to
that.
save money and figure out what was next. And so that was where we were able to create a nest egg for the dream house.
Got it. What was looking for the dream house like? Given it was 2016, correct?
Mhm. Yeah. Um, it was a really fun. I really love that process, and kind of like how at the beginning we really literally only looked at one space.
Hmm.
It was the complete opposite for the dream house because
Okay.
I ended up looking at like 100 commercial spaces. Like it was insane. I went all over Brooklyn, and then um, I found this listing for the space, and it was sort of like too good to be true in the amount of money. I think they said it was like $25,000 a month in the listing. And I was like, we definitely cannot do that.
Yeah.
But it looks so cool. I have to see what this place looks like, you know? And that might have been a questionable decision in the long run. But I did it. And then they did this thing too where I think I think about this stuff all the time, but I feel like they were, kind of like highballing the price so that they could bring it down half.
Mhm. And then you like
you
grab
feel
it.
like you're getting a good deal, but you're not, and you're still paying more.
It's
or
like-
what? It's so annoying.
It's like those stores that you pass by like in Soho and they're like perennially there and they say 90% off.
Yeah, and then they get you.
And then they're just like
And then you're
been
like,
there for
"Why
like
did
7
I
years.
do Yeah. So we went and saw it, and it was this guy, Luis Turan, had built the space out of 2 lots, and he was a interior designer and like fabricator. And so it was just so gaudy, and it was a very Liberace banquet hall.
It was so cool. It's something.
Yeah.
It was different than anything else I had been in New York for sure.
Yeah. It was really weird. And yeah, it had like, vinyl tufted walls, and
Oh, those are the
Yeah, that's
okay.
the wall.
Cool. I didn't even put that together, but those tufted walls are like a harlequin pattern.
Yeah, it was like diamonds.
Yeah, like elongated diamonds in black and white that are poopy and shiny, and it was that whole back wall. So
Vinyl,
cool.
yeah. I loved it. And so yeah, we went in, and it definitely was like, we were like, is this a club? Is this a church? Is this his house? Like, I think he was living in there too, in the basement.
Mm-hmm.
And so it was very confusing. And
It had a big chandelier at the entrance.
it had a
right?
giant chandelier, and then like more chandeliers. A lot of chandeliers.
And it didn't have, as I'm remembering, inlaid wood floors.
Yeah.
It was different styles all kind of put together, but it worked really in this like very specific way.
There were murals inside, and then there was a lot
Yeah.
of ornate wood carving. Like they did these wood carvings, and a lot of those wood carvings that we saw when we first went in, he was able to take out.
Got it.
And initially, when we were negotiating the lease for it, they were actually like, "You're gonna receive this completely empty. We're taking out all of the like finishings and wall
The chandeliers,
treatments and
everything?
chandeliers. Like we're gonna give you it as a completely like fully stripped." And in my head, I actually preferred that. Like I was like, "Thank you. This is not my aesthetic."
Yeah.
And kind of like I had said with my parents' house, that was a little too similar. Like I was like, I don't know what to do with this weird stuff. So I was like, yes, just rip it out. We're going to have like industrial. I wanted it to be more brutalist. I was like, oh, this is going to be great. You're just going to tear it all out, and then it's going to be like derelict and crazy, and we're just going to go from.
What ingredients were instrumental in keeping an experimental DIY space or spaces afloat, given the evolving financial, political, and social challenges of the times?
We were at this time where things were definitely getting more commercialized. I think that also social media was completely different. And so the fact that this was like it started a few years before smartphones started. And even like it was really at the beginning of Instagram.
Yep.
And the beginning of like hashtags and stuff like that. So it really was a different time frame, and it created this space that was just very different for that type of thing to happen. And then also for it to be this sort of like the opposite of what was happening in Manhattan.
Yeah.
Because what was happening in Manhattan at that time, like I was also working at clubs, but it would be more of like a paparazzi kind of experience where you would go and there were like actually flash photography. And that was a big part of the way that those parties in Manhattan were getting documented, but then also marketed. I learned really fast that it was sort of like America's Next Top Model. You had to be ready to have your photo taken at any given moment, and a photographer would just pop out of around the corner, and you would have to just like pose and get it. And that was a part of the job. And so that created a completely different environment and vibe for a party that was a little bit intense, because you're like, you know, probably wearing really high heels, probably wearing something uncomfortable, and having to do that at the same time, and also having to be careful of how drunk you got, you know, because you didn't want to be messy in the photos. Like, so those experiences were more high end. And so then you would basically, there were a lot of nights that we would all be coming from those types of parties in Manhattan, and then there would be a party at the Spectrum, and you would see the same exact friends that you saw in Manhattan, like still in the drag from their job before. But it was like night and day. And it was an experience too where I think at that time I didn't understand as much about like neurodivergence. But I basically feel like it was creating a space where people could unmask themselves. So it was like you would see people in the city and they'd be like, you know, one way and kind of cunty. And then you would see them like 5 minutes later at the Spectrum and they would be like, oh my God, hi. And just like, you know, really just like loving and happy and living their best life. And there was like no necessarily documentation. Like we didn't have cameras and stuff like that. So it created this sort of like a place to really feel comfortable and embraced by your community, and where you could really let go on the dance floor, and where people weren't watching you, and you could be messy if you wanted to. And then it would be like 8 a.m. and sunrise would be hitting, and we would still be there and like trying to stumble home or whatever, you know.
Totally. I find it's such an important part of going out and dancing, and is that you're able to let loose and really be less conscious. Social media has drastically changed the face of dance music culture across the board, but I think that's one of the most major ways that it's done that, is that people are just more conscious. Like if you go out and you think that someone might be taking a video of you dancing, you might be less prone to let loose and just kind of move your body.
I also think that it's very polarized too, because then there are like spaces that now you can't have your phone on the dance floor, or they literally put the, you know, sticker on your camera. And I think that also is extreme in this other way, which I feel like I need something in between. But it's really hard to find that in between.
And I think that different spaces call for different things, because you have some crowds that are, let's say, more in touch with that point of view, whether or not they're people that have experience. I would love to hear some juicy tidbits and stories, and I'm sure that the listeners would too. Are there any that you'd like to share, or perhaps any rumors gone wild that you'd like to set straight?
Oh my god.
So set straight, so to say.
Yeah, right. Well, it feels a little bit removed because it's been a while since I was actually in that position of like having these venues.
Yeah.
But like at that time, it was such a wild thing because it was like so many people would be like at the door being like, I'm Gage's roommate. And you're to be like the 50th person saying that they're my roommate. And my roommate would be working the door, you know, being like,
Oh gosh.
no, I am actually Gage's roommate, you know? So it was just like some weird stuff that like people create these like really wild stories about what's going on. And like one of the wildest ones that I did hear was that I was sleeping with a cop and that was how everything was possible. And I was like, no, how is that? Like, who's even starting this rumor? It was.
So we'll put an end to that.
That did
one.
not happen. That was not happening. However, you know, I do have to say that at that time, the bar that now is the Rosemont was actually run by a bisexual cop. And he was kind of like one of our like little guardian angels. And like we did have a lot of neighbors at both spaces who would really help sustain our longevity in the project.
Yeah.
Like for me, always with both spaces, it was about longevity. It wasn't about quick money. I made a lot of decisions that were probably not financially the best decisions, but it was about trying to see how long we could actually last at these spaces. And so these neighbors really helped us out. And that, you know, that bar was frequented by off-duty cops.
Got it.
So it was a weird dynamic because the cops were actually also down the block.
Yeah, they're right.
It was very close.
They're very, very close.
Very, very close.
It's like,
And
what,
so-
3 blocks away?
Yeah. So that, I think, really helped us. And I think that he was the one sort of like interfacing with them to be like, you don't have to worry about them. They're not a threat. Like, they're not at the top of the list. Like, you have better things to be doing with your time, you know? And so that was one of the big questions where we always were like, how long is this going to last for, you know?
I mean, that is quite the run, 2011 to 2019.
Yeah.
I mean, some places don't last for a year sometimes. It is really quite an accomplishment.
Definitely.
And I find that really interesting when you're talking about longevity as one of your top goals. You know, the longer that you're able to be instrumental in culture, the more you're able to help steer the ship of change and driving things forward.
Really, when it came down to it, it was like, sure, like we love partying, but it was about the longevity of like the community space and like the daytime space for people to come and utilize and like come together. And more of those moments were like the most fulfilling parts of that. And honestly, the part that I miss the most of it is like more of like the daytime aspects, the space for everyone to come together when it's not necessarily always partying, and having that kind of both sides of like the coin of like, sure, we're gonna have fun, we're gonna party, we're gonna get crazy and turnt, but then also like, how do we do self-care as well and support our community as well, and you know, provide other nourishing aspects for the community that would be more of like a turn down, or like, you know, talking about longevity of like humans' bodies, you know, and like yoga, Pilates, breath work, you know, we're going to do some meditation here.
Sounds like they were helping you afford your original goal.
Yeah, and I think that people do like to get caught up with the sensationalized parts of like the sex, drugs, and rock and roll, and there was definitely a lot of that. But like those other parts are really important. And I do think that we learned a lot of lessons. Like I personally learned a lot of lessons from that time. And I was also very young. I was very like in my 20s and 30s about it. And if I could have gone back and like done things differently at different times, I definitely would have. And so there are definitely some regrets. And I think like I've mostly healed relationships that were affected by that. Maybe except for like one big one that were like family feud kind of situations, and that like, you know, it really took a toll. And unfortunately, some of the times it was like to protect the longevity of the project, I made questionable decisions when it came to, you know, choosing the longevity of the space over a friendship, and that was a really unfortunate. You know, but like if people are, you know, talking about things, I'm like, just come to me, talk to me. If like if you've heard some weird story about something, like check in with me about it. You know, like I'm very open to like talk about those things.
Which is really, really amazing to hear, because I just think as a generalization, I think that the communication lines can, in an age of like digital, it tends to be very broken. People tend to talk less in person and ask those questions, and you opening yourself up to talk to people directly about them, I think is incredible. So
yeah, and I think that things do like come up. There also is there is a book coming out. Did you hear about that?
I did. Journey.
Yeah,
Yes.
so Journey Streams is writing a book, and it has a lot of accounts from different people about their experiences there, with like Nita, our friend Elon, Juliana's in it as well. Yeah, I'm really excited to see what happens with that too.
I'm really excited
there's
about that book.
a lot of stories. You know.
I'm really excited about that book. Journey's incredible, and I'm like very excited to see it come to fruition, especially to paint a larger picture of what that was like, and from it's from different people's points of view, right?
Yeah, it's just, I mean, she did personal interviews with everyone.
It's amazing.
And then I haven't read it yet, so we're gonna see how it all
comes together.
Gets braided together.
Well, Spectrum and Dreamhouse are actually iconic moments in time. So it's wonderful that she's taking those steps to make sure that it's preserved, and all of that. Any other stories you want to share at all?
Okay, another funny one.
Okay.
Another funny moment is that me and a friend were walking outside of the first Spectrum, and we ran into this like Hasidic construction worker guy. And then like he just like stopped in his tracks in front of us. And then we ended up like, I was like, give me your phone number. And he gave me his phone number. And I ended up having like a secret Hasidic boyfriend for both of those things too.
The same person or separate people?
Yeah, the same person.
Oh my God, that's amazing.
So that was like another secret of that time frame.
Oh my God, that's amazing.
Yeah, it was really weird.
I would imagine. I mean, I'm Jewish. I've never dated a Hasidic guy, but I mean,
who knew?
Yeah, did he go to parties?
Yeah.
That's what I would think. Yeah.
He would come.
Amazing. You're such a wealth of wisdom about the past, and such a sharply attuned eyes towards an ever-evolving future. And as the dance music scenes can morph and grow continually, is there anything in particular you'd like listeners to know about you personally?
You know, something that I haven't talked about, I guess, publicly that much. As far as like advice goes, one thing that I wish that I had done, I ended up getting sober from alcohol like 2.5 years ago now. And I really wished that I had taken like 1 year off in my 20s and 1 year off in my 30s from like all substances altogether, because I think it really would have changed my whole relationship with myself, with nightlife. And like, I think I would have learned really important tools that I didn't realize I had not learned until basically like I was 40 years old. Yeah. You know, like I was also a very shy person. Like I was really, really uncomfortably shy kid. And coming to New York City, even in my early 20s, I like really had a hard time talking to people. Like I couldn't really articulate myself. I would get like caught up. Like when I was a kid, I had a kind of speech impediment, like stutter, because I couldn't get words out. Like I would just be really locked up.
Got it.
And I think that like basically I didn't realize until I was forced to basically stop drinking. Like I didn't realize that in my whole adult life, I didn't ever learn how to actually finally do that and finally like communicate comfortably with people. And it did not happen overnight. Like, it was really uncomfortable. Like, I had a really uncomfortable year when I first stopped drinking. Like, where people were like, "What is wrong with you?" And I was like, "Ooh, I can't talk." And people were like, "Are you okay, girl?" You know. But I feel like it was a really important thing that I needed to learn, and I really wish I had like learned that in my 20s or 30s.
That's excellent advice.
I would also say moderation is key for everything. I wish I could have found moderation. I don't think I'm very good at moderation. I think I still have a problem with that. So I'm not trying to work on alcohol moderation anytime soon. But yeah, like that experience, like I basically was hospitalized for 4 days. After going on a severe bender for like 10 days or something, around Easter. Watch out, Easter. And basically my lifestyle, I had been leading up to that period of time, I had been trying to really focus on my health. I had known that I had severe health stuff going on, and I couldn't figure out what was going on. And I kind of in the back of my head knew that if I stopped drinking, all of the health things would probably get better. But it was like I was not trying to stop drinking.
It's kind of like a remote thought over here.
Yeah,
like,
and I was working in nightlife still. Like I was
hard.
still like going out, working, doing all the things. And at that point, like I would just sort of like switch from really health food supplements, like really being like trying to be really grounded, like even doing things where I would be like only drinking on the weekend, then not on the week. And unfortunately, I didn't realize that it was as dangerous as it was. But like my ping ponging lifestyle was actually a thing where I think this isn't proven, but my hypothesis was that basically my body had gotten to the point where like the nutrients and like supplements and stuff like couldn't get back to my body because I was like so out of whack.
Like you didn't have the time between where your body could adjust. So it was just kind of like in this state of in between. Maybe?
Yeah, it was sort of like, even though I was like trying to like be healthy, it like my body couldn't receive the health or nutrition basically. And so it was just like I was just running myself into the ground. And unfortunately it got that far that made it so I had to like go to the hospital having sepsis.
That's so scary.
And, like my blood was poisoning myself,
That's terrifying. And
yeah, it was really not cute. And I definitely think for everyone, it's like, and all my friends, I tell them the same thing. It's like I just think it's important to sort of like catch it before it gets to that extreme point. It's like it doesn't need to be a rock bottom. It can just like be like, okay, like where am I right now and what do I need to shift to like support myself,
That's really the most excellent advice. And I would just add to that, the party will always be there. And it's easy to think that, you have to maintain at a certain level to keep up with other people. The way that I look at it, it's one long party and you bop in and out of it as you like. And having done this for 3 decades, it's like it really actually is very true. There's shifts and changes, but listen to your body. Also go to the doctor and all of those things, because everybody has different limits. And there's no one that you need to keep up with, not even a past version of yourself.
Yeah, and definitely it changes over time as getting older. You can't do the same things that you did earlier, unfortunately, and that sort of like that threshold changes all the time.
Yeah,
like with different things, and like your organs are changing, like your heart's changing, and like your
things wear with you.
Your liver might be changing, all that stuff. But like, I mean, Xander said something important once upon a time that always stuck with me, of just being like, sometimes you have to like, you can go out, and then other times you have to just stay home and you have to like recharge that battery. And it's so real. And sometimes you don't know how long that battery needs to charge. Like sometimes it can be days, and like, literally. And unfortunately too, what I'm finding in this sort of era of my life too is that it's like I still have energetic hangovers, and I still have moments where I need to charge the battery, and it's much longer than I think.
Yep.
it is. And it's not just only about being hungover. It's like a completely different thing that I'm like, oh, and all that stuff was still happening then. I always attributed it to alcohol.
Yep.
I was also lucky that I had, in my early rave days, I had really gone through all the drugs really early. So I think that was also really helpful for me to do the business in that way. Like that saved and made my longevity business wise very
like
helpful.
You had done it before, so you were able to kind of navigate through that without adding the newness of other things on top of it.
Yeah.
And I think when you mention an energetic hangover, I think that's like I love the way that you put that, because sometimes it's just, especially in the world of which we live and how fucked up everything is, just sometimes being around other people's energy alone, whether you're using substances or not, can be enough that you just need a break.
I think the pandemic also really put us through it so hard, like everyone. And for me, like coming back from that, it was really hard to rebuild the like nightlife business spectrum things. And I was just like pushing myself. Like I was like going out because like even if I wasn't working, I was like, I have to be out there. Like I have to like be like talking to people and maybe finding a venue or like whatever I need to be doing. And I was pushing myself way past my own boundaries, just to try to do that work wise.
Yeah.
And that was not something I needed to be doing. Yeah.
I find for me, I mean, I'm someone who's always going out like a lot, but I find in more recent years, I've been less prone to just going out for going out's sake. It definitely will be there. So I really appreciate you sharing that, because, people watching out for their own limits and their own health, and also like, being a friend to your friends when you might seeing things go awry.
Yeah, I definitely also had like a lot of assistance from community coming out of that. And I really appreciate it. Like, there was like GoFundMe that really like helped me financially be able to like give myself the time that I needed to recover and find like the help that I needed. Like the Western medicine like only went so far, and they could not give me a definitive answer of what was happening with my health. And I was very clear that it was a bigger picture. Like it was not just like throwing a antibiotic band-aid on it. It was like I need to address the deeper roots of these ailments, or like whatever I need to be doing. Like there's a lot of healing that I had not addressed. That was probably like childhood trauma stuff, like just so much stuff that like I didn't know that I had to work on. And like Reiki Master Hugh really helped me out, and like we did a number of sessions. I really needed that type of energetic healing and reboot, especially after being in nightlife for so long.
Well, what I think is really cool is you talked a lot about one of your biggest purposes with Spectrum was longevity. And it sounds like on your end you kind of came back to that same thing for yourself.
It was in the long run the thing that I didn't know I was looking for the whole time. And it didn't happen overnight. Like I think like the first year was really difficult for me, and then after that it got much better.
That's great to hear.
But yeah, at this point I do think that it was the thing that saved my relationship with nightlife. It saved a lot of friendships that I had. I was able to like heal different friendships as well. And so I have like a lot of, I'm just really happy for life, and I'm excited for artistic projects. And I thought for a minute, I was like, I'm never going to be able to go to a bar again. I'm never going to be able to like work bottle service. And then I slowly did each thing, and I was like, oh, that was not a problem. And I was like, oh, I actually secretly, at a certain point, I was like, I think I go out more than I used to go out,
That's amazing.
But it's not fully like that.
Well, maybe you're, I don't know, you're present in a different way, I guess.
Yeah, and I think that like it's like we are wild, multi-layered, multi-dimensional beings, and it's like I really need a lot of like visual stimulation, sonic stimulation. Like I love sensory things. And
that really, thank you for sharing all of that, because I think it's no matter where anyone might be in their life, or whether they're thinking about being sober or not at all or whatever. I think it's just like very good perspective to hear, right? You know, from the history of Spectrum and Dreamhouse and your own personal history, the one thing that's for sure is that there's evolution and growth and change. It's really exciting to know that, you know, it's kind of keep on our toes and see what manifests in the future.
Definitely. And I'm excited about New York constantly changing and reinventing itself, and new spaces coming and going, and you know, there's a lot of new things on the horizon, and I'm still looking for new spaces to do things with, and they don't always have to be a club or a bar. You know, it's like we're open to a million different possibilities, and even doing other types of programming, like more like art programming, more of a daytime programming, or performance moment. You know, I think that there's so many different possibilities, and you know, like looking at Honcho, for example, seeing the types of programming that they were doing for the talks, that was where I really had my FOMO. Of like, I was like, oh, I really want to go see Cayenne, and I really want to see Viva Ruiz do their talks at Honcho. Like, that's what would really feed my soul right now. And I love a daytime moment. I love that people are doing different like hours, you know, of like a 5 a.m. to 5 p.m. moment. Like, there's just so many cool things happening.
I think we're at the top of a crust of things, especially in New York, really shifting. I think what we're going to look, if we fast forward a year from now, I think we look back and it's going to be a completely different landscape than what we have had for the past, like, maybe 3-4 years.
Definitely.
Which I think is really exciting. And then also, my point of view is if you don't like something, there's a million other things to do. So,
yeah, I also think that, like, you know, I'm excited for like the book, Journey's book, to come out. I'm excited. Like, also, we do have Oscar Ook did the photography for that first Spectrum book that, you know, still needs a publisher. That would be really cool one day to find that, to put that book out finally.
Hint, anybody out there?
Yeah, and to be honest, like, you know, like, I've always wanted to do things in different cities, you know?
Yeah.
So I'm like just very open to possibilities.
It's very exciting.
And just making art too.
Yeah. So just a few things.
Yeah, there's a lot going on.
Well, it's very exciting, and I'm excited to see what, as I mentioned, what you have ahead. And thank you so much, Gage, for coming on to Rants and Raves. And it's been a real pleasure. And I learned so much that I didn't know. And I also am leaving feeling very refreshed for future ahead and see what's to come. And I think there's a lot of learnings from past that can be very helpful.
Yeah, definitely. And I feel like people are always like asking me, they're like, would you ever do another space? And I'm like, you know what? Like, if someone gave me all the money, maybe I would. But also, I am very open to, you know, for the next generations, you know, literally, I'm just a resource, you know, like to talk to, like, just find me, message me. Let's have coffee. Please don't make the mistakes I made.
Well, thank you again.
Yeah.
Crave more conversations with nightlife legends? Follow Rants and Raves on your favorite podcast platform.